All right, so this is the Drupal usability meeting for October 25th. And so far for agenda items, we have the media library and place block edits to talk about. And because last time we've had the media library on the schedule and we did not have time for it, I think it would be good to start with that. And the issue for that one is 2796001. And I guess I can share my screen to talk about it. This one, that one, that one. Yeah. So this is the issue, prototype create design for media library. And Angie outlined the requirements earlier, which people seem to be in agreement so far. So the first is for it to be accessible to content authors, not just content administrators, which basically means that when you are editing content, then you should be able to get into the media library somehow while you're editing content. Not just as a separate UI for listing media. Allow users to see a listing of previously uploaded images when adding a new image, which I guess is so for there to be a library, I guess, is one possible interpretation of this. Another possible interpretation of this is there should be a way to see recently uploaded things as a separate thing other than all of the things on the site, which I think is one of the possible interpretations that ended up in the prototype. Should be a visual representation of images. It should allow selecting from a previous image when inserting an image into a WYSIWYG editor. So basically, instead of this image inserting feature that we have now, that you can only choose from your own computer, it should allow you to pick from a library of existing things. And at the same time, it must not regress functionality, must not regress accessibility features of current image UI, for example, required alt text. So basically things that were in the current image embedding feature that support accessibility should still be there. And I guess all the other features probably. Provide basic filtering options, for example, search by file name, and simple enough to implement by January. Still with all these things. So the high-level plan in the media initiative is to introduce the media entity module, the media entity in core, and basically rebuild this insertion and embedding feature using the media entity, and then build a media library on top of media entity. So that probably taxes the timing of them, of the whole implementation. And then we have a current design that theoretically satisfies all of these requirements. Let me look for the link. It's an external service UX bin. So this is what we have. It's a grid of thumbnails. There's been significant consideration in terms of how a grid of thumbnails should look like, because if you look back at the issue, the other existing media libraries, they may display thumbnails as different size images. This design so far uses uniform size images, which could use some cropping algorithm or focal point or something else, or just some dump cropping by default. But I guess that's one point that feedback would be nice to see. There's a simple filter here for all media, images, videos, audio, etc. There's some simple sorting. So this is where the recently used and recently uploaded feature comes up, which is one interpretation of Eng's requirements. And there's basic text search. And then you should be able to add new things. So if you go to upload new, then you have a way to add new stuff to the media library, either by just dropping stuff here or by launching a file browser. And there's a way to add external content, which was not part of the listing for the requirements, but is part of the overall goal of the media initiative. So this, until that feature is available, then we don't need to implement the button, I guess. But that will allow you to like add tweets and YouTube videos and stuff like that. And if you pick something, then you're able to modify the details of something. So that's how the editing and the deleting features implemented. So there's delete here, and it was not part of the MVP to support multiple editing of items. So I don't think that the prototype is up to date in this regard, but it's not part of the MVP to support multi-edit. And if you launch this from a WYSIWYG or some way where you can embed things, then the button to insert selected to page would appear and will allow you to actually do something with the ones that you selected. And I think these are all the things that are explained in the comments. Yeah. So this is in case we access the media library from the files tab, or basically the media library page. That's currently the files tab. Here, Adam is complaining about modify items. Yeah, blog metadata is not part of the MVP. Yeah. And yeah, and there was some discussion of multi-editing. Then a scroll bar would need to be appearing here, but if we don't do multi-editing, then out of question. So I guess the question is whether the requirements make sense, whether this satisfies the requirements, whether we think this is implementable in the time frame, although that's kind of running ahead of ourselves, I think. So I think it's more like whether requirements are good and whether this matches the requirements. And ideally, we post some supportive and/or constructive criticism on the issue. That's it.
Well, to me, the requirement certainly makes sense. And I think the implementation also looks quite straightforward so far. So for me, that looks fine.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like the basics are there. The requirements totally make sense to me. I do think multiple operations, etc., should be kept out of scope indeed. What I'm maybe missing in the prototype is seeing how you launch into this media library. My assumption is where an image field is presented. Yeah, not sure if I see that happening here. Right.
So I think one is in one way this is a replacement for the files tab in admin content. So that's the that's a global media library for content administrators. And then the other way, or at least one other way, would be the seek editor's image button, where you insert an image to WYSIWYG. And then the third way that may not have been considered so far is an image field on an entity could do the same thing to launch the library, yes. Indeed.
So yeah, I think what I see happening inside the media browser makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure how definitive the placement of certain links and buttons is, and how, yeah, like add external content versus upload new. I'm not sure if upload new is in the most logical position at the moment. But that's feedback on a certain level of detail that tells you that the basics are solid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we certainly don't have the pattern of having buttons on the same level as the title of a page. So we don't have, or the title of the pop-up probably that's this kind of use.
Yeah, so I think that's the two areas of feedback I see. How do people get into this? Get into the media library, get into the browser, and yeah, I'd love to see some. And maybe it doesn't even need it before we say this is good enough to start building something. But yeah, arrangement of the user interface of the buttons and the links and the filters, etc. I think they're now not in the positions that are defaults for the 7-admin theme would give us, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And
they would show up in a dialogue like this.
Right.
And we don't have a way to put them like this. The design has the X over here and then the 2 buttons over there, and we don't have a way, or don't have the practice of putting buttons in the title bar of the dialogue.
Exactly, yeah. Right, and that's also another question. If it replaces the File tab, does it mean the Files tab? Does it mean that that Files tab is gone? Or the other question is the media library always shown in a modal? Because I could imagine that this tab could also work as the media library as we see it. I mean, that's not the way you could use it to insert stuff.
Yeah, the insert button does not make sense there, but that's what the
right.
But it would not show up there. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the context for this media library would be good to at least spell out, list out how you can reach it. Always in a modal, or if the Files tab could still also become something like this. And then, yeah, would be good to look at the details of arrangement of the elements in the screens. What do other people think of this?
I totally agree that it could be a really good point to have something similar on the Files tab. I mean, it has a lot of sense for me, a lot. Of course, there's some stuff, some buttons that doesn't have sense to place them there, but I actually think it's kind of logical. And I don't know.
I'll say overall, I like the browser. I think the browser looks really good. One thought on adding images. When I want to quickly add an image, I just want to add an image. And I think is allowing it to go into the browser mode to be able to choose existing, but also having a method for quickly uploading a picture. I'll organize it later. I just want to get the picture on the page so I can move forward. So I don't know what the thoughts would be on that type of a deal. Is, you know, just quickly add it. Let's worry about the browser mode later.
So that's quickly adding a new image, right?
Correct.
Yeah, what you're saying is that this kind of forces you into it. So this makes the assumption that if you want to add an image, that it's likely an existing image instead of uploading a new one, because uploading a new one is yet another button that you need to press. After you press, do you want to add an image? I guess.
What actually
Yeah, that's
happens if you
true.
click on Upload New?
You get this thing.
Oh yes, sorry.
So yes, this workflow prioritizes, optimizes for reuse, and
Yeah.
the creating or uploading a new image is a bit more involved, more clicks. Yeah, good point. If we keep it like this, then we have to just have to be sure make that trade-off consciously, right? We know that we're optimizing for reuse, but it could be worthwhile to explore if we can fork into upload new earlier, or more direct.
Does it
I've had
have a separate button?
had field.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that I've had things set up before where we had a choice for upload new and then also media library as a selector, so you could enter into both immediately.
So do you mean that you have separate buttons on like CK Editor, or on an image field it would have like two buttons and one would launch the one and the other would launch the other one?
Yeah, that's what we did in that case.
Yeah, I guess that is the step before, right? There is no other place earlier. That is the step before. You either launch the media library, and there click upload new. If you want to do it sooner, you have to do it on the entity or as a separate button in CK Editor, or yeah.
Yeah, so that's what you said you're missing, that you don't see the step before, and that now it makes even more sense that it's missing, because now we could even design some interaction there.
I'll say my vote's probably for dual buttons, add a new, and then also another one for browse existing. And the reason is because anytime we load up a model box, it takes time, and that's kind of, you know, when I'm just banging stuff out, I don't want to sit there and wait on a box to pop up, and then now I have to click another button to choose whether I want to upload something or browse existing. So, I mean, unless we can get some type of caching in the core of Drupal that will preload some of this dynamic stuff, which kind of does away with the whole dynamic aspect of things. But just the amount of time sometimes it takes for these boxes to open, I can wait 3, 4, 5 seconds to open this dynamic box while it's loading all those resources. And that's, you know, that's time consumed. It's kind of frustrating from my standpoint.
Plus, if you have a dual button, it would also solve the question that you might want to build a site without a media library. So where you only want to have the option to upload an image directly. And if that would be tied into a media library, you would actually add that as an additional resource that has to be loaded or has to be worked around all the time. So a dual button would be definitely more flexible on that.
Yeah, what we have now is this button in the CK Editor, which gets you this dialog. And we have this button as an image field, which gets you like a standard desktop thing. So you say that we would have two variants of this button and a way here to launch into adding a new file and having a library, or have a button to have a library, and this would just add it to the library too or something.
Yeah, good luck designing a new icon for CK Editor that makes that distinction clear. That's tricky.
So I think these are the two embed, or these are two positions that we may want to upload new or choose from library. In core, at least.
One question I have on this, if we were to do it as an add new, does it automatically put it into the file explorer?
Well, now because you're launching in, so I guess now we are launching into the media library. So here, if you do upload new, then the assumption is that you are uploading into the library, right?
Yes, that's what I would think.
Yeah, but
basically upload it into the media library as an unorganized item. Now, obviously, it can organize it based off the file extension, but any other organization would need to be done at a later time. But my thought is that if I'm adding a new image right there from that screen, whether it be from the CK editor or from the entity field, it's like throw it in the media library. I'll mess with it later. But there's also a link that says, browse existing, to where if I want to get in there and choose an existing, then boom, I can go ahead and pull up that page or that model box and choose an existing.
Okay.
That's kind of how my workflow mind thinks on that, though. So I don't know if that's the best way to do it or not. That's just kind of from my workflow standpoint. That's kind of how I would expect to see it done.
So it would be added to the library regardless, right? Even if you upload a new one directly from your desktop, it would still be added to the library.
Okay.
Right. No, is that your expectation?
Yes, that would be my expectation. Once I upload it, it's in the library.
Yes. Okay, I agree. I would assume that there should be no secret other bucket where that stuff goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be wise to have two separate buckets containing media. One that's not in the media library, and then another group that is in the media library. And that's some of the issue I've run into with the current implementation of, on Drupal 7, for example, they are separate. And sometimes that gets really frustrating. It's like, no, I want it in the library. So now I have to go to a completely separate page, upload those images in there. And okay, now it's in the media library and I can reuse it. So that's been part of my workflow frustration. I just assume if it's uploaded, it goes into the media library, and now I don't have to worry about it later.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah, I agree as well.
I agree as well.
Okay.
Good.
Is it true that we already have a version of multiple uploads in core?
Yeah, we do.
Does the library account for that?
As in, what do you mean?
As in bulk upload.
I think so, yeah. So I think this allows you to drop
Okay,
a number of
and the browse button would allow me to shift select or...
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think this allows you to drag multiple files too, if the field allows multiple files. My question was, so I think what's delicate about this design is where is all the metadata stored and edited? Yeah, so unlimited files. If I allow unlimited files, I go back, create my content. Then there's now multiple files, and I can just drag in 3 files, and boom. So that already works.
I never knew that.
That works. That totally works.
Nice.
Yeah. Totally. You could just drag them there. So yeah. So what's not covered though is where is all the metadata being edited? It simply does.me something. Maybe now. No. So because here, if you select something, then you edit the alt text here, description, whatever. And here, when you insert an image, you specify the alt text, uploaded alt text, and then a line, and then caption and something. And these are definitely the alignment, and maybe the caption are placement specific, so they are specific to the embedding of the image. And the alt text may be placement specific, or it may be a property of the image, right? So I think there's some delicate details in there that will need to be figured out, but I'm not sure if we need to. No.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Because the alignment is certainly placement specific.
Yeah,
Right.
and it would be good to have a master alternative text that you can potentially override per placement.
Well, that's what you can do now, right? So if the image field is configured to,
Oh, right, yeah.
you have alt text. Let me go back, image field. So it already supports alt text and title stuff. And I can provide the default image like that too. So if I don't try to be fancy here, let's see if simply me cooperates here. And just pick one. Okay. So I can provide the alt text here. And then this goes to the library. If we just discussed earlier, this just goes to the library by default, and we save and publish. And then when we would embed the same thing later, question is if then we use this alt text and we can do other things with it, or what happens there. I guess it's a question of how the existing accessibility features are retained.
It's interesting because it's analogous to the blocks problem also. If I have a block plugin, I can give it a different title per block plugin.
Yeah.
You know, it's different levels of customization at different placements, and I don't think that we've been at all clear there either. And I almost feel that if we have a pattern, that the pattern should be consistent for anything, which is an instance of, you know, we need kind of like a mental model rule that's an instance of, right? You know, that something that is ephemeral, and that if I delete this block plugin, or if I delete this particular placement of this piece of media, that the ephemeral information that I've added will go away with it. I don't think people are necessarily clear on that.
Yeah, so then I think that, like, if you select insert to the page here and on the design, then if there are further details to provide, like if we want to keep these features around, then there needs to be some way to provide these features, right? They don't make sense for if you're using an image for an image field, because the image field does not have that metadata. But if you're pressing this button, then you need to have this here to say, no, I want it center aligned.
It's also odd because there's, well, it would be odd if you added it for an image that was just in an image field, because it takes no effect. But it's odd also that you have configuration options that only exist on the instance and not on the parent.
Yeah.
Like, that they could cascade down. You know, it's almost like you want to put a field, if you're editing it on the parent, that you want to put a field label that says, when placed in a WYSIWYG, you know, align left, center, or right.
Well, this depends on this content. So also ideally, this would not be configurable. Like somebody would make up the content templates for your content, and then the content template would, and then you would only use images in certain fields, and you would use something like paragraphs module to structure your content inner structures, etc. And then nothing like this would be ever needed. Right?
Yes.
The actual content structuring scenario, instead of putting presentational details in your content editing thing. But yeah, so I think for now we are looking at what we need to reproduce from this feature for it to be a viable replacement. And it may be that we don't need to do something to reproduce this feature. I don't know.
I think there's also a mix of things that might not actually, or that maybe shouldn't be mixed, because the alternative text is something that's that very strongly belongs to the image as such.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often a caption also belongs to the image.
Mm-hmm.
And you might want to override that. And the alignment certainly is something that only has to do with once the image is placed. So not treating that as a kind of all the same kind of characteristics of an image might be useful already. But
yeah, I agree.
So I went to discuss this with the person who did the prototype, and he said that it basically depends on who we are designing this for, because it depends on how the media library is used, right? So if you are like a newsroom and you are shooting new photos of everything for your news, then you are not going to reuse the same picture with different captions in different posts. But if you have a media library that you actually reuse things from, then you may use the same nice picture of a cat with different captions based on what you're using it for.
Right, but you can have the canonical. You can have the canonical caption that needs to be surfaced in the instance of, right? So what needs to happen in the first instance, or the first placement of that image when you create a caption for it, is, or whenever you upload it, or wherever that metadata is added, that is the canonical caption, and that you would have to use, it would have to be like a multi-value field, where if you want to override that for a placement, that you would always be able to see the canonical caption, and then you could create an override for that particular instance. But it would have to be spelled out explicitly to the user. But however, I think the more salient point, though, Antje makes is that the radio buttons for placement really belong in the WYSIWYG toolbar itself, not in the modal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Once you place the image, you should still be able to align it however you want. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which you can. You would just use your
Yeah, we don't have that enabled by default, I guess. For some reason, we have it for images, but not for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, where's the alignment? Yeah.
I think you would use the blocks because if you just have alignment using the text align buttons in the WYSIWYG, the text is not going to reflow around it. You're not floating it. You need to use the secret block.
Yeah, so that's So the reason I raised that is because we need to figure out a way. So we need to figure out what's the MVP for this, and if the MVP is reproduce every feature, and if we're also saying that what feature there is, it doesn't make sense as it is, then reproducing it doesn't make sense either. So then we need to define what's the new MVP, other than reproduce. Now that we say that reproducing the feature doesn't make sense. So what may make sense is just to not have a line and maybe not even alt text and caption on an instance level, and just like insert the image from the library and use the alt text and the caption from the library if there is anything.
Yeah, I feel that may be a little too restrictive. I kind of feel like we should take in the main implementation, the existing implementation, we should take out the align left, right, center. I've always kind of felt that there were presentational stuff that was improperly stuck into the entity.
Mm-hmm.
But that for the, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I think maybe an alternate text per insertion or per instance is not MVP, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I think what would make sense for the kind of sites I'm dealing with mostly would be that if an image is uploaded and it has an alternative text and a caption, which quite often can also include like the photographer or so, and you get that pre-populated in your field when you include it in the WYSIWYG editor, and then you can actually change it for that instance. Yeah. But when what stays in the media library is the text that was added when you are uploading it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but even in that instance, just having a field there that people type into and then erase what was there and then hit save is not enough affordance to the user that I have overridden this thing. It's like you need to have like a checkbox on top of the field that says, that has checkbox create alternate text or override alternate text for this instance, so that people know.
What we have on the design is you say insert selected to page, and then you get the same screen that looks like the editing screen. And then you just edit the alt text, and then you don't know if it edits the original or it's just for the placement.
Right, exactly.
I think what you mentioned about a multi-value field, I mean, that's kind of in my mind, you have a global field that's site-wide, and then you have that instance-specific field for that particular page. So, I mean, I would think that once you set the global field, it just sticks across the board. If you reuse it, it pops up and says, here's the global value. If you're good with it, great. If not, then you can put in that page specific. And if anything is in that page specific field, then it overrides the global or something of that nature.
And what you'd probably kind of want is you would want it to be a read-only field, styled like a field with the text in it, but you can't put your cursor into it. You can't even put your cursor in and change it even if you wanted to. When you're in the act of placing the thing, you can only change it if you actually go to the library, open up the file, and then are looking at the quote unquote canonical caption or alternate text. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that. I think read only, once it's set, it's locked in. If you go into, you have to consciously change it.
Yeah. So you can type into this sort of like override field, but you can't when you're placing, but you can't type into the canonical caption field.
Yeah, if that's the case, then we definitely need some kind of instructions that say, hey, this to change this, change it in the media library with a link or something of that nature. That way, if somebody does need to change that global field, there's a link right there ready to go, and it pops in a new tab or something like that to where they can go edit it. But yeah, by default, they can't just go in and change it.
Yeah, because otherwise,
it looks like
people will do that.
I think this might be something that actually might need user testing. But I think what we do agree on is that there should be a text that goes with the image and stays with it. But how users change that, I think might be, we would actually need to look at prototypes and possibly have other users look at it.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
maybe we could get
And the question before that is, do we want to solve for that in the MVP, or is the MVP cool with just having one fixed alt text?
Well,
yeah,
I know I initially said no, but this is functionality that is already there. I mean, we already have the ability to create. It's not like we're creating a new functionality. We already have the ability to create unique individual overrides of alt text and captions in any individual placement of the image, if I understand correctly. Is that right, Gavin?
Well, we don't do the overrides because what we have now is when you place them, you cannot pick an existing image. So you always add a new one.
we don't have reuse, right? So the problem does not exist.
Yeah, we don't have reuse. That's the problem, yeah. And the fields here, they don't have reuse either. So you always upload something new, something new, something new, and you edit the alt text of the new thing. But at least core doesn't have any reuse at all.
Right. But if it did have reuse, it would get all of the kinds of things that a company would be some kind of a plugin, right? That would have the same kind of functionality that other plugins have, which is that it would have the ability to have a unique override at those fields.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we need I think we have a lot of input now, and we don't have a lot of time for the blocks topic. So I just want to be conscious of time.
Good point.
So I think for next step, I think we raised some concerns with this that Kiboman can work on, and then maybe look at it soon after, and then I think I've heard some concerns that certain interactions wouldn't be user testing. So I guess final question is if we should make this a Drupal prototype and do user testing on that, or if we should test it on this fidelity, or what would be the best?
Whichever is faster.
One quick question on the file, Media Explorer. I keep forgetting what to call it. Anyway, any plans for doing a preview of the image? So like a little magnifying glass, you click on it and it blows the picture up.
Not in the MVP.
Yeah, I think that's not MVP.
Down the road type of a thing.
Yeah,
it's a nice thing.
Yeah,
feels like a contributed module to me.
Okay.
All right. So I will rewatch this again and post feedback unless somebody made some.
Well, Gabor, I typed notes, so I missed a bit of the alt text discussion. Maybe if I can quickly share my screen, we can look at what I wrote up. What I have, if people are seeing it, feedback from this meeting. Requirements for the MVP make sense and the prototype fulfills them. Our feedback is on details. Essential details, whatever. I list how to get into the library. We need to list the multiple ways you can enter this media library to get a complete picture of where the library can be triggered. So one, via the files tab. Is there a non-modal version of the library that could replace just what's there now? Via CK editor and via the image entity field, image or entity fields. And more. Shortcut to directly upload a new image. The current proposal optimizes the workflow for reuse of existing images. What about wanting to directly upload a new image? What about dual links for adding images or files? So that you'd have upload new image and use existing image. Arrangement of button filters, etc. on the overview screen and other. The placements of button filters, links, etc. is non-standard. It's okay to deviate from what we normally do, but those exceptions have to be made deliberately. For example, our create new action is placed top left of the screen by default, where in this design those actions are placed top right. A refinement or review of this would be welcome. Where to add or edit metadata? Alternative text, is there only one alt text per image, or can the alt text be overridden per placement? Do we need those overrides per placement as part of the MVP? Probably yes. How would that work? The alignment. Do we want to mention it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yes, I think it should be mentioned.
Is this the right phrasing? Because this is where I trailed off.
Yeah, it should not be metadata. Yeah, definitely.
Would not be metadata.
In the library, it's fine.
Attributes.
Okay. Did I miss anything? Because
I would just add a little bit to this, to the alternative text thing, to just say, perhaps it would be a good idea to show the canonical meta and the override together in the upload.
I think that really is the part that needs testing. But we should mention that it's for both the alt text and the caption that this is a relevant text question.
Yeah, exactly. For alt text caption, so something like, so for alt text and caption, can we prototype and test designs where the canonical version is displayed, but the per instance version is editable,
or where it's used to pre-populate a field. I think that it needs exploring different versions on that.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, totally.
So I wouldn't set the direction there already.
Yeah, so maybe it's phrased around something like explore design options for surfacing to the user the fact that there's a canonical version of this text and that they can override it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome, perfect.
Usability testing. This feature. What should be? So is there a question here? Like, does the media team, do we have somebody who wants to refine the current prototype versus do we want to build something and test that? Is that a question we have?
I think your question is more like, should we test a refined prototype that matches the feedback that we have, or do we want to have a working prototype that like actually has all the entry points and has some way to look like it works? Yeah, we definitely don't want to build it all out and then test it. That's not what we want. It would be sad.
Okay, anything else? how to get there, shortcuts, arrangements of items on the screen, metadata, usability testing. If not, I'll review it once more and post it as feedback.
So we still have a few minutes for blocks and edit. Emily?
If you want, Emily.
Okay. Yeah, I really just had one question based on what we talked about last week. So we were talking about where place block would go if outside in aren't enabled and quick edit isn't enabled, and so that would get rid of that edit button. And I was wondering if it would be possible to have that edit button still available so we could have edit essentially just put you into the place block space.
I can visualize the question.
Okay. So if we're moving place block in and we want a space where people can access that instead of having a place block button, it seems to me that it makes sense for that to go under edit. And so the concern was that we wouldn't have the edit button if outside in isn't enabled and quick edit isn't enabled.
Right. Right. Yeah. So we had a discussion about this. So I did some designs for this that I've shared with Gabor and Angie and a couple other people, and I can post them. I can post them into the issue. But basically, the idea is that once you that edit is so. Edit is always there, you know, in, well, yeah, you know what? It's not true either. We do need, well, so edit is there, edit is installed by, edit is there by default. So there's always an edit button in a stock install. Somebody could remove quick edit module and not be able to access block place. So we do need some kind of a way that the block place shows up if it is if edit module is disabled. But I believe we talked about this and the thinking was that it would just be a module override in settings tray module that if the block place would only be hidden if the settings tray was enabled. Then it would pop. It would reappear otherwise if somebody disabled the settings tray or disabled the settings tray and thus the edit mode. So you would never lose block place capability completely. Does that make sense?
So then people would see a block place button instead of an edit button. Is that the thought?
Well, right now they see, right now if you have block place and you don't have settings tray, you see block place and edit on the right hand side of the toolbar. And the edit is coming from contextual links module, right? If you were to disable contextual links module, you would see just the block place on the right hand side of your toolbar. What we're saying is that if the settings tray module alters the block place to hide the block place button and to just automatically turn on placement of blocks when you click edit, that would be the behavior if you had settings tray enabled. If you disabled it, the block place module link would go back to where it was on the upper right hand side.
Okay, so what I was wondering is if we were talking about having block place come into effect when you click edit, and so I was wondering if we could, even if you have the other modules disabled, if we could still have block place come into effect when you click edit instead of having a button that would appear that would be different.
I think that that's a great idea. I think that we should do that. Yes.
Okay. So what I'm planning on doing then is building out 2 different interactions to test. One where you have edit and it automatically triggers the block place mode, and there's a slot for every block area that you could place, and then doing an alternative that has a slot at the top, and then you would have to drag and drop, because I think those were the two interactions we talked about as possibilities.
Yes. Yes, I think that, yeah, definitely we should test that. Yeah. So you are going to build that as a prototype in Drupal, or as just like an InVision or something like that?
As a prototype in Drupal.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely worthwhile testing. I would love to see it be that, that they're, that they don't actually take up space as well, but that's a harder problem. In other words, they like the spaces in between the blocks somehow, only expand when you're hovering over them, or you click a small icon and they expand out to show you where you can add a block. But yeah.
Yeah,
I
think that would be great.
An enhancement. I think this is definitely a good idea. We haven't done enough testing around this. I mean, you've done all of the testing, I think, yeah, we definitely should test some more things in that area.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So I have a plan.
Cool.
All right, that's a good finish.
Yay.
Hey, I just posted the comment to the media library. So
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody.
thanks all. Good review. Good input all. Thanks. Next time.
Thanks.
Bye. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye.